Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Damn Music Show. I'm Michael Wagner. This is Darren Dreyowitz. Darren, both excited today, but you lead in. What are we talking about?
We're going to do an episode of Decade Discussion where we talk about a particular decade and what happened in that decade and what we think about it. This is a super unique one because we're doing the 90s, but only half of the 90s.
It's a half a decade.
To 95.
Yeah.
So it's a decade discussion half.
Yeah.
But there was so much that happened from 90 to 95 that we're going to talk why that was such a unique set of 5 years. And this is a two-parter because Mike and I have known each other for 3 or 4 years, and we just discovered a week ago that we both like this band live, which we think is underrated.
Yeah.
And had the fortune and misfortune of being in those 5 years with some super stiff competition. So that's a long lead in. Stick with this. And we think if you're a kid from the 90s or like that time period, you're going to like this.
For sure.
This discussion. So that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, why don't we kick it off then? What we're talking about.
Here's the basic premise. So the band live.
We're going with the band live.
Yes.
Today. Yes.
They had their big mainstream album came out in 94 called Throwing Copper, which had a whole bunch of hits on it. They did have one album before. It was moderately successful. But we both like them, and we think that they sort of got buried under a mountain of talent. We do a decade discussion about how the 90s music sort of overtook the 80s music. I invite you to check out. But check this out. This is off the top of my head. I wrote down last night.
You're like stream of consciousness this to me the other day. You're like just super fast.
So here are the bands that released either their first album or their first commercially successful album from 1990 to 95. Check out this list. This is just a partial list. Alice in Chains, Jane Addiction, Nirvana, Collective Soul, The Offspring, Soundgarden, Smashing Pumpkins, Goo Goo Dolls, Foo Fighters, Sublime, Stone Temple Pilots, Pearl Jam, and another little band called Green Day.
Small bands.
All of those bands put out 2 to 3 albums
from that window.
From 1990 to 1995, and the live comes out in 94, Throwing Copper. And another band we like, Incubus, we're not going to talk about their first album was in 95. So you know these guys, Incubus and Live.
Yeah.
2 great bands. Looked at the competition. They must have been like, this is some bullshit. I mean, come on.
And they even, I think their songs sat at the top of the charts for like 10 weeks or something. So they had like a really strong push.
Right.
And then it kind of just fell apart.
Well, look who they had to compete with.
For real. I don't actually know if there was a little turmoil underneath behind that. I think they've got beef now, right? Like they had some beef that they were like trying to lay down to like go back on tour. I would go see Live in 5 seconds. So Live, if you're watching this, please go on tour. We're all coming. Like me and Darren will be in the front row.
I will be there.
Waving our hands. So that's insane. I mean, that's an insane amount of competition. Those are some of the biggest bands in history. If we're gonna if you decide to include the 60s and 70s, smash all those together, you got some of the biggest bands in history.
Well, Throwing Copper, we're talking about Live. Throwing Copper, which was the one that had a lot of the hits on it. Also in 94, Soundgarden had an album.
Small band.
Released, in 94. Stone Temple Pilots had a band, or an album in 94. Pearl Jam had a band, or an album that came out in 94. Those are just 3 bands.
Yeah.
But also the same time period. So
and these are just off the top of your head. I mean, we're not talking about we got Rage Against the Machine.
I didn't even make a list. This is just insane.
For sure.
Those 5 years.
There's a ton of other bands that are going there. So something that I love about Live is I actually found out a little bit later after I'd fallen for them that their producer is known as Jerry Harrison or Jeremiah Harrison. And Jerry Harrison originally played in my favorite band, or one of my favorite bands, the Talking Heads.
Oh.
He was the keyboardist and one of the songwriters that worked with David Byrne.
Like an earlier version of Talking Heads? Or?
They just all of Talking Heads, like when Talking Heads was around in the 80s.
And so he did some producing.
And then he rolled off and had a pretty decent career in production. In fact, he produced their big record and all of their big songs. And I kept wondering, why do I love all these songs? Well, there's the guy that basically produced also.
I hear no Talking Heads in their music, but
I do.
That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I definitely do.
You do.
Yeah, definitely. Like tonality and things, I hear similarities.
Right.
Very much. Let's talk from a production standpoint. Like when I listen to both of those from a production standpoint, there's actually a lot of production similarities. Yeah, they may be using different instruments, and that's why when you're like, I don't hear any of the same things.
Yes.
you're not hearing like the same synth, the same bass lines and stuff. But from a production standpoint, I'm hearing a lot of the same pickups, a lot of the same mics, a lot of the same techniques that were used. So I was like, oh, well, that's why I love them. I mean, that makes sense. And that didn't hit me till a lot
Yeah,
later.
so for you guys new to the show, Micah is a professional music producer out of, we're coming from his studio, Mr. Studios in Austin, Texas. I'm a professional marketer. So those are nuances I probably would not pick up.
For sure.
But man, speaking of marketing, can you imagine
Oh my
the record
gosh.
company? the other 94 Pearl Jam releases, again, Soundgarden released something in 94. Collective Soul is like down the list of some of
It's
these
like
bands.
back of the bus. Back of the
Yeah.
bus.
And how crazy is it that we sort of have to think of Goo Goo Dolls and Collective Soul sort of down the list, but we have to because of who's there. But now here you are live, and you got this producer, this proven producer, and you got to go against Soundgarden and Pearl Jam.
You've also got, this is funny. So I'm
sucks.
looking at the 94 year
Yeah.
release too. You also got Boys to Men hitting the top of the charts.
right.
So you got a lot of like, I think maybe people were
there some
leaving.
others that-
I
yeah.
think also like leaving a little bit, like, because before that you had like Nirvana and Green Day, and all those were the big ones, 88, 89,
Right.
90, 91, 92, 93. So now all of a sudden
Green Day, Dookie came out in 1994,
So
same year.
But I wonder if but this was a big turn, and now that I'm looking at the top 100 charts, we're talking Janet Jackson, R. Kelly, Ace of Base, Tony Braxton, Mariah Carey, Celine. So I think it was maybe a big cultural shift. I think they like all the other bands kind of had established who
alt-rock.
their fans
Yeah,
were,
right.
and now all the people were liking Ace of Base, Boys to Men, and so like Live comes out with the album, and while they had a big album, big hit, they probably were trying to pull from the same pool of fans as Pearl Jam and Stone Temple Pilots, and those people are like, hey, I love you, you're cool, this is awesome, but I like my band better. So I think maybe they had this weird middle ground where
When
music
you
was
come out,
really
it's
shifting a lot.
So important. So if you watch our 80s decade, that sort of hair metal time period, I define as like 83 to 90, those 7 years. Mm-hmm. And if you're a hair metal band that came out in 89, 90, you're kind of screwed because all these wonderful bands
Right.
came in
Right.
and pushed the hair metal
And
out.
they pushed the
alt
new,
rock,
they
grunge.
took the charts over.
Alt rock and grunge are not the same thing to me, but they're very close. They're very close cousins to you. They sort of pushed all that out stuff. So what you're saying is right around 95-ish, the Ace of Base and
I mean,
Boys
look
and
at
Men
this.
sort of
Yeah, that's
changed
a
the
big
pop.
shift. R. Kelly starts coming into the
Yeah.
list here.
And so
you got
Live had
Aerosmith, but they're down at like 72. You
Right.
know, like it's not like they're not pushing the tops.
So in addition to Live coming out on the sort of tail end of all these amazing albums
Mm-hmm.
and bands, they're also fighting on the front end of a sort of a shift in the marketplace.
Big pop shift with
Yeah,
with,
what a nightmare. I mean,
yeah.
what a total nightmare.
For them, for sure.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah, for sure. I see that a lot in the industry where you have like an amazingly talented group of people, and they're even with an amazingly talented group, like band with an amazingly talented group of people, and it's just not the right time. It's not the right place. Like, I don't mean to be too cliche here, like if we're watching a bad rom-com, but the
Yeah.
thing is, like, how many times have you been across a person and been like, you know what, this just isn't the right time and the right place? Like, life and relationships work out when timing and everything come together. This sounds like a bad moment of timing.
And what,
2 years before, Pearl Jam would have probably like held their candle.
Yeah.
You know?
And what was
All the Pearl Jam fans right now are jumping on me. They're mad at me right now.
What is the name of the lead singer from Live? Do you know?
Oh my gosh, I always forget his name.
In my opinion, gosh, it just escaped my brain. But anyway, in my opinion, he has a really unique voice.
Ed
That sort of pierces through.
Ed Kowalski.
Yeah, that's right. I knew he had a.
Can't pronounce it.
Yeah. He's got a very unique sound voice. He's got a sort of a cry. It's got a way. His voice pierces through the music a little bit more than others.
He does. It's brighter.
But-
it has like a nice. It has a nice brightness to it, around that 2 to 4 K.
Brightness is the word.
Yeah.
But 94, he's singing seriously against Eddie Vedder and Chris Cornell.
Yeah.
And the dude from Alice in Chains and Jane's Addiction, too, were also amazing.
It's funny. I'm gonna go as like far as to say they are my favorite band. Had they produced more music than the other bands,
Yeah.
like they just the limited amount of music
Right.
forced me to like where else do I go live? I had to go back to the other ones, but I actually liked live more than at that quick moment, more than I liked Pearl Jam, more than I liked Stone Temple Pilots, more than I liked all of them. Not by a lot. I just really, really liked them. I liked what they were doing.
Here's my testament. So in the 90s, I almost exclusively listened to 90s country, the Haddocks, right? HAT, the Haddocks. That's what I listened to 90% of the time in the 90s.
Nice.
I listened a little bit of this music, and a lot of my knowledge of this music actually comes after that decade, discovering it late. I will tell you that of all these bands, the only album I bought was Throwing Copper. In that whole decade of all those things. I may have had a Green Day one in there.
I 100% had the album.
All those bands.
Yeah, me too.
And I know them now. But back then, I was really in my little 90s country bubble. But that was the only, I bought a CD, but that was the only album I bought with Throwing Copper. That's how awesome
I also think there's something to be said, too. Like, Live came around and they threw out Lightning Crashes.
Yes.
And, like, it's amazing that song can make it. You remember how long it takes to build in? It's forever. And like that you could do that was going away. That left us in the 80s. That's like 70s. Yeah. That's going back to like Pink Floyd and Gilmore when you could like get away with a 4-minute intro.
Yes.
I mean, it's like insane. Yeah. So I remember that was
they had
like
several 5-minute, 6-minute songs.
They had tons, and then and it's just that slow, oh that feeling.
So part 2 is we're gonna pick a song by them and break it apart theory wise.
Yep.
And so we hope you stick around for part 2.
Yep.
What else would you... This is Decade Discussion, 90 to 95. We'd love to hear what you think of those 5 years. Are we right that those 5 years are insane? I thought about this last night. The only time period that I can maybe think comes close to this is the late 60s when the Doors and that sort of... I don't know... a flower, acid rock, whatever you call it. I don't know enough about that time period, but there was sort of an explosion away from the Chuck Berry, Elvis stuff to the late 60s flower power movement, where a ton of bands all came out from like 65 to 70.
Yep.
But I don't know a ton about that world.
Oh, I can go into that for sure.
And my sort of collective
that'll be fun.
Knowledge.
I can, which is weird, right? I'm the youngest of the two, but I can definitely go into the 60s.
I mean, I know
70s.
some, but I can't rattle them off like top of my head like here. But I can't think of another 5 years in my lifetime where it was like the floodgate of talent opened up in those 5 years. I think this is just a partial list. I'm sure.
I think there's something we both like about at least the idea of authenticity. Because when you say the floodgates of talent, I think there's a lot of unbelievably talented people that roll through. But there was something about that grunge, that 90s and stuff that felt so real. It was
on the heels. Look, and I was a kid in the 80s, and I loved the hair metal stuff I did. But that time period was about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It was very much a party thing. It was very light on substance. You know, in terms of skill, just shredding the guitar and singing, it had a lot of that. But some of it was kind of a hokey music, right? And so the 90s brought more of a realness.
It brought it, and like, I mean, the reality is, like, if you look at those singers, like, we still idolize a lot of those singers. We don't necessarily idolize a lot of the other ones.
Yeah.
That's not true, actually. That's not true. We idolize a lot of the singers that passed on from that, like, 90 to 95 period. As it ended up coming across the music. Well, we appreciate you guys so much. Smash that subscribe, follow along, comment. We'll talk about whatever you guys want to. My name is Michael Wagner. This is Darren Drewitz. Follow the next part. We're actually going to take a live song and break it down why we love it.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.